Jazzcast Pros.
Now, hear me out. What if the key to real healing wasn't just another supplement or strategy, but simply reclaiming your right to rest? In this episode of the Doze Podcast, we explore how sleep is more than just a tool to optimize performance. At its core, it's your body's most powerful, natural form of recovery. We also put the brakes on sleep as just another thing to optimize in your quest for health, and instead shift the focus back into how it's the ultimate built-in recovery system that you have. Welcome to the Doze Podcast. I'm your host, Soda Kichkowski, certified sleep coach, founder of Start With Sleep, where we provide personalized sleep coaching and educational programs, and the owner of The Doze, an exclusive line of sleep-enhancing products. With almost 20 years dedicated to sleep health education and advocacy, my mission is simple yet transformative: to help you reclaim your sleep as the foundation for personal and professional success. So today I want to let off the gas a little on the optimizing everything narrative because, while sleep does absolutely make us sharper, faster, and more focused, its true purpose runs much deeper. Sleep is not just about peak performance, it's about healing, it's about recovery, and most importantly, it's about you. So if I could share something personal with you for a moment, I've always deeply valued my sleep. It has been a constant companion, my recharge point, even before I knew the science behind it. But there were two notable exceptions that stand out in my memory. I haven't always done the right thing with my sleep. The first was a bachelorette trip that I took to Las Vegas in my 20s. We lost an entire day due to weather delays. Like we got snowed in Oklahoma. So once we finally arrived, I really chose to push through almost 2 days straight without sleep just to soak up every moment of our short trip. I was young, so it was much easier back then and no permanent damage done. But, I have pulled those all-nighters. Second, ironically, was when I actually entered the world of sleep medicine. It seems like a strange truth, but many sleep professionals, especially sleep technologists, those who are looking at you while you're actually performing your sleep study, they often struggle with their own rest. They sacrifice their sleep to monitor others. In those early days, I was learning the clinical side of sleep, but the conversation around lifestyle, stress, nutrition, and recovery, it was really nowhere near what it is today. I've even personally made the mistake of using melatonin to quote unquote crash without understanding that it doesn't really work that way. When it comes to our sleep, melatonin is actually a sleep regulator, not a sleep initiator. And if you haven't heard it, I'll drop the link to my melatonin episode below. So in that time, I was gaining weight. I was feeling overwhelmed. At times I wasn't able to shut off my mind because it was very stressful. And for the first time, I actually had some of my first struggles with sleep. And, that lived experience, it woke me up, of course, pun intended. And it sparked my mission to really go beyond the generic tips. It taught me how deeply personal sleep is and how generalized advice rarely works. It led me to advocate for the work that I do today with working with shift workers and first responders, those whose professions ask them to work against their natural biology and who are too often left unsupported until a sleep disorder forces a diagnosis. But beyond those two, becoming a mother was also a real eye-opener for me when it came to sleep. There were so many people in the early days that warned me of the late nights and the exhaustion. But, by then I was deep into my maternal sleep health training. And I knew that while the struggle of raising kids was absolutely going to be real, right, that the battles with sleep didn't have to be. So it was during my pregnancy that I realized just how little support existed in hospitals or in the community for new moms navigating sleep. I remember going to the prenatal class with my husband at a hospital, and they brought in dentists to show us how to brush their teeth. But there weren't a lot of support resources in terms of being new parents and around sleep in general, which is the biggest concern that most new parents have, my daughter Ryan just turned 11, and it's only now that we're starting to see real consistent support for maternal wellness, but really only on the doula end. So while my original interests in sleep were deeply rooted in maternal and child sleep, I've pursued certifications outside of that area, obviously into the adult sleep sector. My work has pulled me in many different directions simply because how few qualified professionals are available to support individuals with their unique situation. And yes, I know that there are many baby sleep consultants, but as someone who comes from a clinical sleep medicine background, I've always been very cautious of them because many of these consultants, They complete these short programs and they lack the medical training to recognize red flags. If something clinical is happening with a child, their advice, however well-intended, can sometimes do more harm than good in some cases, So there are only a few that I feel comfortable referring families to. And I share all of this to say that my journey through this field hasn't just been professional, it's also personal for me. It's the reason I do what I do today and why I remain so passionate about the subject and getting others to evangelize the message as part of their own journey. Life is demanding, whether you're someone always on the go or someone taking it in stride. But to survive, enjoy, and truly experience the journey, you need to reset when needed. Sleep is our body's most powerful recovery tool, but it's not something that you can force upon yourself. It's a natural process. And to fully engage with it, you need to rethink how you approach it. Sleep isn't just about hitting your targets faster, stronger. It's about holistic, deep-rooted recovery. So to break down, how does it work for us in terms of recovery, right? First, in healing, that body repair mode. Deep sleep is when your body goes to work. It repairs tissue, regulates your hormones, restores immune function. It also helps to reduce inflammation and manage pain without needing to reach for external remedies. It works as a brain reset. While you sleep, your brain clears out the mental clutter from the day. It's like closing all the tabs out on a busy browser. This helps you remember what matters, like where you put your keys, or what your kid told you at breakfast, or the name of that client that you just met. It sharpens your thinking. It helps you focus. It keeps your mind fresh for tomorrow. And last, it helps be a mood and mind recharge. Quality sleep helps to regulate your emotional responses. It builds resilience, it increases your capacity for empathy, and it lowers your baseline stress. So I've put together some actionable recovery tips for you to try. So when we're thinking about our sleep, we want to start simple, right? Starting with nature. I want you to get outside, think about grounding yourself literally. This is taking off your shoes, walking barefoot in the grass, right? Getting in that morning sunlight is really important. We know that light regulation helps us sleep our best, right? We want to get light during the day, during the afternoon. We want to limit those artificial light sources at night, but light first thing in the morning is super important. And then also making sure that you're breathing in that fresh air, which can recalibrate your system. You also want to make sure that you're consuming magnesium-rich foods, especially in the evening, things like leafy greens or nuts, because they help calm your nervous system naturally. The next is I want you to think about sleep long before bed. I have that episode that I like to talk about often, bedtime begins at breakfast, and I stand by that, even before then. From the moment you open your eyes, every choice you make, what you eat, how you move, how you manage stress, either supports or sabotages your ability to recover at night. And then I want you to shift into creating a sleep-friendly state of mind, meaning that we want to use technology with caution. Tech tools, they can help, but only if your mindset about sleep is healthy. Wearables, trackers, apps, gadgets, they can all point you in the right direction, but they're not the solution. They serve as a baseline to help you make better choices, but only if you have set goals for yourself. They can set you up for physical sleep success, but there is mental work that also goes into crafting a better night's sleep. It comes down to your thoughts and your commitment to making everyday choices that support rest. From the minute you open your eyes, every choice that you make leads you to the sleep that you'll have that night, and that sleep fuels your tomorrow. So my advice to you would be to use the technology wisely and use it to set yourself up for consistency in your schedule. You have to want better sleep. You have to choose it consistently. So what I need you to know is that true recovery is not about chasing perfection or obsessing over numbers. It's about creating space for restoration. It's about being intentional with your habits, being aware of your thoughts, and committing to choices that align with rest. Sleep in itself is not a hack, right? It's a healing process. Let the tech support you, but let your mindset guide you. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone you know who needs to slow down and could use their own reset. For more personalized guidance and curated sleep tools, you can visit us at startwithsleep.com or explore our recovery-focused tool offerings at thedose.co. Remember, better sleep tonight means a better, healthier, more resilient you tomorrow. Until next week, sleep well.